Stimsaves.com. Spare time is money. Question everything.
Angela Holmes. Tandrin tests and 900 at Newgate Prison in London. Witnesses report a large crowd gathered outside the prison walls. Angela, a witness, describes the scene. See where the path of sin lies, the scaffold. When the hangman pulls his lever, the gates to hell will open, and 3 lost souls will plummet down to the fiery bosom of the devil. According to records, the execution is scheduled for 8:00 a.m. The hangman, William Marwood, prepares the gallows. The crowd is estimated to be over 10 strong, with many more watching from nearby rooftops. Lestrade, a Scotland Yard inspector, is present at the scene. He is quoted as saying, "Like I always say, Professor, give the people what they want, they'll turn out for it." This statement suggests that Lestrade views the execution as a spectacle, rather than a solemn occasion. Sherlock Holmes, however, the execution itself is carried out quickly and efficiently. At 8:05 a.m., the hangman pulls the lever, and James Moriarty drops through the trapdoor. Witnesses report that the drop is estimated to be around 10 feet, with the rope stretching an additional 6 feet before Moriarty's body comes to rest. In the aftermath of the execution, the crowd disperses slowly. Many are seen leaving the area, some looking visibly disturbed by what they have witnessed. Others, however, seem to be in a state of morbid fascination, discussing the details of the execution among themselves. Watson reports that he and Sherlock Holmes later discussed the event, with Holmes remarking, "It was a most singular case, Watson, a man who lived by his wits and ultimately met his end in the same manner." As the morning wears on, the tension builds. Angela, a witness, describes the scene. See where the path of sin lies, the scaffold. X:55 a.m., a commotion operational having executed over 200 prisoners during his career. As the minutes tick down, the atmosphere becomes increasingly charged. At 7:55 a.m., a commotion breaks out near the front of the crowd. Witnesses state that a group of protesters has appeared, holding signs and chanting slogans. The protesters are calling for clemency, urging the authorities to spare Moriarty's life. The protesters are quickly dispersed by the police, but their presence adds to the sense of unease in the air. The crowd begins to murmur, sensing that something is amiss. At 8:00 a.m., the scheduled start time, the hangman steps forward. He adjusts his mask, ensuring it is securely in place, and gives a signal to the guards. The gates to the scaffold swing open, and 3 condemned men emerge. William Heather, Arthur Wicks, and James Moriarty are led to the gallows. Each man. The priest's efforts are evident in the calm demeanor of the men as they approach the gallows. As the men reach the scaffold, the crowd falls silent. The only sound is the rustling of clothing and the soft hum of the wind. The priests lead the men to the edge of the platform, where they will stand until the execution takes place. One of the priests, Father Michael, addresses the crowd. "May God forgive you, and may your death be a lesson to other poor souls." The crowd responds with a mixture of murmurs and whispers, some people looking on in horror, others seeming to take pleasure in the spectacle. The tension builds as the minutes tick down. At 8:04 a.m., the hangman steps forward once more. He gives a signal to the guards, who move forward to secure the ropes. The trapdoor opens and the men drop through, their bodies suspended. The lights 26 Feb 2016. Events unfold in a series of bizarre incidents. At 9:45 p.m., witnesses report seeing triangular lights hovering above the village. The lights are described as being around 10 meters in diameter, with a bright pulsing glow. Witnesses estimate that the lights are around 500 meters away from the village center. The explosion appearance of the lights triggers a response from the Royal Air Force. Jets and helicopters are scrambled to investigate the incident. According to RAF records, 2 Typhoon jets and a Chinook helicopter are deployed to the area. As the military aircraft approach the village, an explosion rocks the ground beneath them. Witnesses describe the blast as being incredibly loud, with some reporting hearing it from several kilometers west of the village center. As the morning wears on, tensions rise among all. "I'll meet him in hell." According to Watson, Moriarty's demeanor remains calm throughout his time on the scaffold. As the morning wears on, tensions rise among the crowd. The protesters are quickly dispersed by police, but not before they manage to disrupt the proceedings. The hangman, Marwood, checks the ropes and trapdoor mechanism one final time before giving the signal to proceed. As the men drop through the trapdoor, the crowd erupts into chaos. Some people cheer, while others cry out in shock. Back in Pentarsh, the strange lights continue to be seen by multiple witnesses. The lights are described as being around 20 meters high, with a bright, pulsating glow. Witnesses estimate that the lights are moving at a speed of around 50 kilometers per hour. As the night wears on, the lights disappear as suddenly as they appeared. Phone services begin to return, and the figure is described as being tall and wearing a black coat. No further information is available about this individual. The events of the day leave the village of Pentarch shaken. The cause of the explosion and the meaning behind the triangular lights remain unknown. Pentarch, South Wales, 26 Feb 2016. The events unfolding in the village are mirrored in another location, miles away from the scene. At 8:05 a.m., Father Michael leads the procession of prisoners to the execution site, a large platform erected in the center of the village. The crowd watches in silence as the priests lead the men to the edge of the platform. One of the prisoners, Arthur Wicks, begins to struggle against his restraints. Meanwhile, back at the scene of the explosion, witnesses report seeing a figure fleeing the area. According to eyewitness accounts, the figure witnesses staged by police who move in to restore order. In the days following the incident, investigators will scour the area, searching for clues and piecing together the events of that fateful night. Witnesses state that the explosion was so powerful that it shattered windows and damaged buildings in the surrounding area. As the investigation continues, officials will review footage from security cameras and interview witnesses to piece together what happened. But for now, the questions remain: what caused the explosion? And what was the meaning behind the triangular lights? Pentarch, South Wales, 26 Feb 2016. The events unfolding in this small village will leave a lasting impact on the community. At 10:00 a.m., Father Michael leads the procession of prisoners to the scaffold. Witnesses report hearing Wicks's pleas for mercy as he is led to the edge of the platform. According to Watson, Wicks's demeanor remains calm and the officers move in to restore order, using batons to subdue the protesters. Were largely made up of women and children, all dressed in black. Records show that over 50 arrests were made during the incident. Meanwhile, back at the scene of the explosion, investigators begin to survey the damage. According to eyewitness accounts, the figure seen fleeing the area was tall and wearing a black coat. As the morning wears on, the execution proceedings come to an end. Meanwhile, back at the execution site, tensions rise among the crowd. According to records, the police used tear gas to disperse the protesters. Witnesses state that the protesters were largely made up of Professor Moriarty's loyal followers. Over 50 arrests were made during the incident, with many more injured. At 11:00 a.m., the police begin to cordon off the area surrounding the police begin to process what happened, while others are already speculating about the cause of the explosion. Witnesses report that Arthur Wicks, one of the prisoners, began to cordon off the area surrounding the explosion, with witnesses reporting seeing forensic teams collecting evidence from the scene. The investigation into the explosion continues, with officials working around the clock to determine the cause. Witnesses state that the explosion was loud enough to be heard from several miles away. As the investigation unfolds, new details emerge about the figure seen fleeing the scene. Witnesses report that the figure was tall and wore a black coat, similar to the description given earlier. The police are working tirelessly to identify the figure and determine their involvement in the explosion. But for now, the identity of the figure remains a mystery. The police emerge about the figure seen fleeing the scene. Witnesses report that the figure was tall and wore a black coat, similar to the description given earlier. The police are working tirelessly to identify the figure and determine their involvement in the explosion. But for now, the identity of the figure remains a mystery. The villagers of Pentarch are left to wonder about the cause of the explosion and the meaning behind the triangular lights. Pentarch, South Wales, 26 Feb 2016. As the execution proceedings continue, tensions rise among the crowd. At 10:05 a.m., Father Michael begins the final prayers before the execution. Tensions rise among the crowd, with some onlookers becoming increasingly agitated. Witnesses report seeing several individuals attempting to push their way through the police lines. Witnesses describe the figure as being around 6 feet 2 inches. Investigators bend until the very end. According to Watson, witnesses report that Wicks's eyes lock onto Holmes, who is standing near the front of the crowd. Investigators begin to collect evidence from the scene, including fragments of metal and debris. Witnesses describe the chaotic scene, with people pushing and shoving to get a better view. According to Watson, Holmes has been working on this case for 3 months. The most dangerous and capable villain in the whole of Europe finally captured at last. Witnesses report that Holmes was seen speaking with Mycroft, who arrived at the scene in a cab. Mycroft is described as being in a high-ranking position within the government, according to sources. Wiggins, the head of the Baker Street Irregulars, is also present at the scene. He is seen speaking with Holmes, discussing the details of the case. Wiggins reports that he checked the book himself, verifying at 10:07 a.m. the hangman's noose is adjusted and the trapdoor is prepared. Lestrade, the Scotland Yard inspector, approaches the scaffold but is met with resistance from the crowd. "Spare me your smug philosophy, Lestrade," one of the onlookers shouts. Witnesses state that Lestrade attempts to reason with the crowd, but they are too agitated to listen. Meanwhile, Professor Moriarty's plan unfolds. Records show that he had been plotting his escape for weeks, using his vast network of informants and accomplices. His scheme involves creating a diversion during the execution, allowing him to slip away unnoticed. According to witnesses, Moriarty's henchmen are positioned throughout the crowd, waiting for the signal to strike. This description matches that of Professor Moriarty, who is known to have such a scar. Witnesses report seeing people running in all directions trying to escape the cloud of gas. The lights seem to be pulsing with an otherworldly energy, adding to the sense of unease and tension. The explosion occurs at 10:11 a.m., just as the execution is about to take place. Witnesses report hearing a loud blast, followed by the sound of screams and chaos. They are still trying to come to terms with the events of that day and the role that Professor Moriarty played in it all. At 10:05 a.m., Father Michael's voice reaches a crescendo as he says, "I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live." The triangular lights reappear in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the scene. John Watson's account describes the scene as one of complete pandemonium. Pentark, South Wales, 26 Feb 2016. The investigation into the mysterious lights and explosion continues. The triangular lights, first at 9:50 a.m., RAF jets and helicopters are scrambled from nearby bases, responding to reports of a possible threat. The planes fly low over the village, but their presence seems to have little impact on the situation. Meanwhile, back in Pentark, the crowd is growing increasingly agitated. Lestrade, the Scotland Yard inspector, attempts to reason with the crowd, but they are too caught up in the chaos to listen. "It's only a matter of time before we recapture him," Lestrade is heard saying. "I have 300 men deployed. Every port, every railway station, every public building is being watched." But despite these efforts, the situation continues to spiral out of control. But his words are drowned out by the sound of explosions and screams. Witnesses describe them as being around 1 mile in diameter, with a strange energy emanating from them. As the execution proceeds, my caution appears to give Moriarty's the stay. "I checked the book myself," Wiggins says. "It's all there, just as Holmes said it would be." The book in question appears to be some sort of intelligence report, detailing Moriarty's plans and operations. According to witnesses, it contains information about Moriarty's vast network of informants and accomplices. Records show that Moriarty had been plotting his escape for weeks, using his vast resources and connections to create a diversion during the execution. As the explosion occurs at 10:11 a.m., the triangular lights disappear from view. In the aftermath of the explosion, investigators begin to collect evidence from the scene. The role of Professor Moriarty in the events of that day remains unclear. At 9:45 a.m., John Watson arrives at the village of Pentark, South Wales, to witness the execution of Professor Moriarty. He meets up with Inspector Lestrade and 11 a.m. state that he was seen meeting with several individuals in the days leading up to the execution, all of whom were later found to be part of his network. Wiggins, one of Moriarty's henchmen, is seen reading from the book, confirming its authenticity. The blast is so powerful that it knocks over several buildings in the surrounding area. In the aftermath of the explosion, investigators begin to piece together the events of that day, trying to understand how Moriarty managed to orchestrate such a complex and daring escape. As the investigation continues, one thing becomes clear. Professor Moriarty was a mastermind of crime, always staying one step ahead of his pursuers. His ability to plan and execute such a daring escape has left many in awe, including Sherlock Holmes himself. In the end, the true extent of Moriarty's involvement in the events of that day may never be fully known. Inspector Lestrade attempts to reassure the crowd that they have more. At 10:30 a.m., John Watson arrives at the scene, where he meets up with Inspector Lestrade and other officials. According to Watson's own account, he is seen conferring with Lestrade and discussing the events of the morning. Investigators believe that the triangular lights were part of this diversion, designed to distract the authorities while Moriarty made his move. At 12:00 p.m., Inspector Lestrade holds a press conference to update the public on the situation. He confirms that Moriarty is still at large, but assures the public that they are doing everything in their power to recapture him. However, witnesses report that the mood among the crowd remains tense, with many onlookers expressing frustration and anger at the authorities' handling of the situation. But despite their best efforts, many questions remain unanswered. How did Moriarty manage to escape? And what does this incident? One Moriarty's coat. Records show the Moriarty's coat sign wearing the coat during his arrest. One eyewitness describes the scene as chaotic, with people shouting and pushing to get a glimpse of the authorities. Investigators estimate that the explosion caused significant damage to at least 5 nearby structures. Pentirch, South Wales, 26 Feb 2016, as the explosion occurs at 10:11 a.m., Professor Moriarty's accomplices scatter, leaving behind a trail of clues. Witnesses report seeing several individuals fleeing the scene, including Wiggins, one of Moriarty's henchmen. Records show that Wiggins had been in contact with Moriarty's network for weeks, coordinating the escape plan. According to investigators, Wiggins was seen reading from a book, confirming its authenticity before the blast. The triangular lights which had been spotted by witnesses report that he is seen pacing back and forth, clearly agitated by the turn of events. At 9:45 a.m., Lestrade meets with John Watson, who has arrived on the scene. According to Watson's account, they discuss the possibility of Moriarty's escape. Lestrade asks Watson to review the evidence, but Watson cautions that it may be too early to tell if Moriarty is involved. One of these individuals is Wiggins, who is seen reading from a book in the moments leading up to the explosion. Witnesses state that Wiggins is calm and collected despite the chaos around him. The book itself is later identified as a rare edition of The Count of Monte Cristo. Investigators believe that Moriarty used the book to send a coded message to his accomplices, confirming the timing of the escape. According to experts, the code is based on a complex system of symbols and numbers, requiring a high level of math. The investigation continues several hours to crack it using a complex system of symbols and numbers. According to them, the code requires a high level of mathematical expertise to decipher. They estimate that it would take an expert several hours to crack the code. As the investigation continues, officials begin to question the role of high-ranking officials in Moriarty's escape. Witnesses report that several officials were seen speaking with Moriarty in the days leading up to the escape. Records showed that these officials had access to sensitive information about Moriarty's movements and plans. The investigation into Moriarty's escape is ongoing, with officials working tirelessly to uncover the truth. As new evidence emerges, one thing becomes clear: ordinary event. It required careful planning, precise execution, and a web of deceit that reaches the highest levels of power. Wiggins won moments leading up to the explosions for weeks, following a series of cryptic clues and hints. Wiggins, one of Moriarty's most trusted lieutenants, is seen reading from a book in the moments leading up to the explosion. This message was likely sent via a pre-arranged signal, allowing Moriarty's team to synchronize their actions. One official, identified as Sir Reginald Pembroke, is seen meeting with Moriarty on multiple occasions. Pembroke's involvement raises questions about the extent of corruption within the government. Did he knowingly aid Moriarty's escape, or was he simply naive to the true nature of the situation? Investigators are working to uncover the answers, but so far, no concrete evidence has emerged. Meanwhile, experts continue to analyze the book and its hidden message. As they work to crack the code, they are also searching for any physical evidence that might have been left behind by Mo. According to seeing a suspicious individual lurking around the village on multiple occasions. According to investigators, Pembroke had access to sensitive information about Moriarty's plans, including details about the escape route and the location of the explosives. However, it remains unclear whether Pembroke was aware of the full extent of Moriarty's plans. Further analysis reveals that the fabric is from a rare and expensive suit, similar to those worn by Moriarty on previous occasions. This finding supports the theory that Moriarty was indeed present at the scene, but it does not provide conclusive evidence of his involvement. As the investigation continues, officials are faced with a daunting task: unraveling the complex web of deceit and corruption that enabled Moriarty's escape. With each new discovery, the picture becomes clearer, involving high-ranking officials and a network of accomplices. This assessment is echoed by Inspector, who describes Moriarty as the Napoleon of crime. The investigation into Moriarty's escape reveals a complex web of planning and execution. In the days leading up to the escape, witnesses state that several officials were seen speaking with Moriarty in secret meetings. These meetings took place at various locations throughout London, including a small cafe near the British Museum. Investigators estimate that these meetings lasted anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, with some sources suggesting that they occurred as frequently as 3 times a week. The fabric is later matched to a specific tailor in Paris, who confirms that he had sold a similar suit to Moriarty several months prior. The book itself is later found to be a rare edition of the Bible, with the hidden message encoded using a complex web of planning and execution. In Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1. One such official, identified as Inspector Lestrade, is seen speaking with Moriarty is well documented. Inspector Lestrade is seen speaking with Moriarty on multiple occasions, despite being aware of his reputation as a mastermind of crime. Lestrade's involvement raises questions about his own integrity and judgment. Pembroke's involvement with Moriarty is well documented, with records showing multiple meetings between the two men. On February
Stimsaves.com. Spare time is money. Question everything.
See